Hi, today I want to talk about Mondstadt, the City of Wind and Freedom, and my thoughts on it, what I think they could improve with Mondstadt, and honestly how I think it stacks up to the other cities in the game. Of course, Mondstadt City is the very first city you encounter. You will encounter it within, what, the first 30 minutes of playing the game, and honestly, for an introductory city, Mondstadt is pretty alright. But as the game goes on, I cannot help but feel that Mondstadt has quite a lot of pitfalls that the other cities don't, and while some of these may be quite intentional, because it is the first city the player wanders into, I really do think it has a couple flaws that could be very easily fixed. So, of course, Mondstadt opens with you walking through the city, and honestly, full credit due, everything is very close to the entryway. I mean, you've got your blacksmith, you've got your adventurers guild, you've got your valuable shop, you've got your general food, you've got your general store, and you've got your alchemy table, all right early in the city upon as soon as you go in. And honestly, it's very tightly packed, so that if you're already here, you can just kind of run from A to B and not really have to worry. But, it is very small. I mean, it is the introductory city to the game, but it is a very, very small city. I mean, if you compare the size of Mondstadt to, the region as a whole, it is very small. And, you compare it to places like Liyue Harbor, even Inazuma City, Mondstadt feels very small. And this probably was done intentionally, given that it is, the first city in the game, but I can't help but feel like once you complete the prologue, it feels like there's never any reason to go back to Mondstadt. It doesn't ever feel like there's anything hiding, there's not really any, secret recipe shops or anything such as that. It just feels very small, and it doesn't feel like it has a whole lot going on for it, because, let's face it, half the whole region is taken up by the big statue in the middle, which is honestly fitting, and then you have the cathedral, but other than that, there's not really a whole lot going on in here. Not to mention, the fishing association's very far away from your teleporters, and honestly, the city bounties reputation area is just kind of annoying to get to. I mean, it doesn't take very long, but it's kind of annoying to get to. In addition, a lot of quests, or hangouts, or story quests for some characters need you to go to the cathedral, which is quite a ways away from the nearest teleport waypoint, making it honestly very annoying to have to run back and forth between the cathedral when you don't have a quick way up. I honestly think this problem could be fixed just by having a teleport waypoint somewhere in the courtyard or somewhere right on the exit of the city. Hell, even one on top of the cathedral would have been pretty cool, given that we already have one on top of the Knights of Favonius building. But it does feel quite annoying. In addition, the Knights of Favonius building doesn't really serve anything outside of, the library that, you go into once to collect all your books for your achievement, and then you never ever go there again. And a couple story quests that don't really even use it beside of a cutscene or a couple lines of dialogue. It just doesn't really feel like it offers much. Perhaps if they expanded on it, it could be cool, but it doesn't really feel like it offers much. Not to mention that it's a very vertical city compared to most other cities. Of course, you'll be seeing me using the Wanderer for its sheer mobility. But it does make it somewhat annoying to go from A to B in Mondstadt because you're just constantly climbing. And early game, when you don't have the stamina, you're going to have to run around and look for stairs. And it's not always the most fun way to explore. It does feel like a very lived-in city, and I'll give them full credit for that. It does feel like a lived-in city. It just feels very small, and it honestly, to me at least, feels like a hassle to get around most of the time. Obviously, once you have Wanderer, or Scar, however you want to name him, it becomes a lot easier, but it's still kind of annoying. In addition, it doesn't feel like a lot of the Mondstadt questline itself really uses the city outside of general dialogue, which is a shame, because it feels like the city isn't given the proper recognition it deserves when you contrast it to something like Inazuma City through the Archon quest, where you're basically barred from being there and you're using, say, the tea house or other locations in it. With Mondstadt, it just kind of feels like, go to the Good Hunter to talk to Sarah or to talk to Amber or whatever, and then leave. Or go to the Knights of Favonius to talk to this one guy, or Kaya or whatever, and then leave. It doesn't really ever feel like the city is utilized in its quests, outside of the cathedral.
There's no need to exchange
which is very annoying.
It's really pathetic to force a
Not to mention, this could
just
just be due to its, early status in the game's development, but it honestly feels like the cathedral could simply be built into the map, if you will. It doesn't feel like the cathedral needs to be its own cutscene, or rather its own location with the loading screen, because If you look at, say, Sumeru City with the Academia and the giant library, that's all seamless. Whereas with the Cathedral, it's an entirely separate area. Not to mention, there's just not going on in the Cathedral, and you can't even go downstairs to the neat area downstairs past, what, Chapter 2 of the Mondstadt Archon quest? It only shows up once. Which is a shame, because it's an interestingly designed area. But other than that, I mean, the Cathedral works as a cathedral, it doesn't feel like it should be its own separate building. It feels like it really could have been done seamlessly with the rest of Mondstadt, especially given the technology we have now when you look at Sumeru City. Of course, there's a small possibility that they could rectify that, but I honestly doubt they will, because it's Mondstadt, you know, it hasn't really been updated a whole lot, besides, you know, adding the cat's tail in with the TCG. Which is fine, but it just... When I go... The other problem with Mondstadt is, when you go to complete your commissions, or go talk to Catherine or whatever, you generally either go to Inazuma because it's super close, or Liyue because the alchemist table's right there. With Mondstadt, unless, you know, you're just new to the game, it doesn't feel like you ever but you never need to go to Mondstadt. There's no reason to come back here past doing your city bounties, which, honestly, given how the bounties work in Mondstadt, and Liyue for that matter, isn't very enjoyable. It just feels like it's got a lot of potential that just isn't being used. And it feels like, you know, I know obviously old Mondstadt, Stormterror's Lair, whatever you want to call it, builds a lot on the lore of the city itself, but I still can't help but feel like Mondstadt itself is quite underutilized. Perhaps having us come back here at some point, or adding maybe more stuff to do in Mondstadt that's, say, unique to Mondstadt, it feels like that once you've gotten past the prologue, there's never any reason to come back here unless a quest mandates you come here for some reason. It's unfortunate, because, you know, I'm willing to bet a lot of players have great nostalgia from, you know, walking into Mondstadt for the first time, because on the first time it is quite an amazing sight. But then you start progressing in the game and you compare Mondstadt with, say, Liyue Harbor, or Inazuma City, or Sumeru City, and it really feels like it's been left behind. I know it's based on old Germanic culture and old Germanic cities and whatnot, because it's Mondstadt, but it does really feel like it could do with an expansion of some sorts, or just some more stuff to do in it. That's just my opinion, though. I just wanted to talk about, you know, what I like about Mondstadt. And I do like Mondstadt. I think it's fine, honestly. I think it serves as a fine starting point for the game. I'm just a little disheartened by the fact that it doesn't ever really show up again. And it doesn't really feel like there's any reason to come here. Like, I go to Inazuma City every day to hand in my dailies because it's, you know, easy. But with Mondstadt, if you don't have someone like Wander, you know, you spawn the teleport waypoint, you have to run quite a bit compared to Inazuma, or even, not Liyue, but compared to Inazuma, just to get to the Adventurers Guild. And let's face it, you probably don't need to come to these shops very often because, well, for one, they don't serve... You can't buy food here that is, like, not available elsewhere with other more unique local specialties around. And outside of dandelion seeds, the city doesn't really have any local specialties within it compared to, say, Liyue Harbor with glazed lilies or the silk flowers. And in that regard, it just feels underutilized. I wish they'd do a little bit more with it. I don't hate it, of course, don't get me wrong. It's just, I wish they'd do a little bit more with Mondstadt. Please ignore the new available players to challenge. So, thank you all. I'm considering doing this for the other 4 cities in the game. Obviously, Liyue Harbor, Inazuma City, and Sumeru City. So please let me know if you'd be interested in that. And I will see you all later. So thank you. Bye.